today we're going to be going through and looking at the configurator for Business Central and Nav as well. So I'm going to do the demo in our sandbox on Business Central Cloud. Most of this is available in Nav and CAL, but all the new features are going into AL first. So they're going to go into Business Central Cloud version first, and then they'll make it to on-prem and then the CL after that. Now, the way it works, I'm going to start with the sales quote. It'll work out of a sales quote or a sales order or just, standalone. But what we're going to do is we're going to go into a sales quote and, create a configuration. So the first thing I'm going to do, we'll just bring up the sales quote here. I'm going to create a brand new sales quote for us to play with. And we'll keep it pretty simple. So we'll do, our standard happy company customer there. And then once we're done here, we simply come in and you have a couple of options. We've got the BOM designer, which is the standard tool to build up a single item. And then we've got one that's more of a spreadsheet view where you can build up a number of configurations simultaneously. So I'm going to start with this BOM designer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through 3 or 4 different types of configuration. And this is all mostly using Cronus data. So in Cronus, if you have the extended stuff, it's got bikes, it's got furniture, and it's got computers. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to build some furniture, some computers, and some bikes. So I'm going to go into BOM designer, and somebody's phoned me up and said, you know what, I'm looking for a computer. Oops. So I'm going to type in here, the type of product I'm building. So the way this works is everything is based on the configurator item category. So if you have different product lines, like here I've got, this PC for Office. Well, if I'm Dell, I've got 4 or 5 different product lines for Office PC. So I might have 4 or 5 different categories here, one for each product line. So in my case, I've only got one product line for Office PCs. So when I choose that, it comes up and gives me a list of everything that I can configure on this particular type of product. So in this case, it's pretty straightforward. We've got our processor, RAM, hard drive, monitor, keyboard, mouse, all of that kind of stuff. You'll notice the keyboard, I've defaulted that in. So some of these can be default options, some of them can be mandatory, all those sorts of things. But in this case, I'm just going to come in here and start selecting the choices for these different options for my PC, right? And you can tell this is really old Cronus data, right? We've got a whole whack, a gig of RAM that we're using. And by the way, that default quantity is again a setting you set up. I can come in here and say we're going all out and getting 2 gig of RAM there. So that's basically what we're doing. We're just going through selecting our options and deciding what we want to build. And when we're done, we just go ahead and hit OK. And that's going to create that configuration for us and add it onto the sales quote or the sales order. And it's as simple as that, right? Now, what it did was I didn't quite mention it, but actually let's go back in there and we'll just bring that configuration back up. So it actually calculated out that price for me automatically, right? So it went in and using the unit price on the item card, it came in and generated the price. It also calculates the standard cost, so you can figure out, am I making or losing money on that, all those sorts of things, and it's generated that for me. So when we get into the sales quote here, all I have to do is enter my quantity, and we're good to go. Now, this one, by the way, was set up as an assembled order item. So as soon as I enter the quantity, of course, it does the quantity to assemble to order, and we're done. So it went in, built this PC, and I'm good to go. And I can turn this into an order, I can schedule it, I can do all of the things I would normally do with a standard item. Okay, so we've created this assembled order item, and we're good, we're done. That's all there is to it. Okay, if I need to edit it, again, I can come back in there like you saw, I can go into the configurator, hit BOM designer, and edit the heck out of that, and it'll update the sales quote accordingly. Now, let's do one that, they say, well, I'm buying this computer, I also need a desk to put that computer on. So let's go ahead and do the desk. So we'll do an office desk here. And here you'll notice we've got, a couple of things that are bolded because these are mandatory, right? Options, I have to choose those. And we defaulted a 6-foot table, and we can select doors, so I'm going to choose a wooden door here just for fun. And I'm going to not choose shelving for now, and I'll show you something in a sec. And I'm going to come in here and I am going to choose the trim. So now this one illustrates a few additional things that we can do. The first thing it illustrates is that I didn't do a good job of setting up pricing on it, but other than that, one of the things that we can do is we can set up those rules that I mentioned earlier. So here on the length, I can say, you know what, I want a 12-foot desk. And now as soon as I arrow off this or tab off this, you'll notice a couple of things. I choose a 12-foot desk. What it did was it said, hey, anything that's over 10 feet, you have to have shelves. So it automatically forced me to have those shelves in there. And we can also set it to exclude certain things. So if I, maybe if I choose a 12-foot desk, I'm not allowed to have wooden doors or not allowed to have glass doors. We can disable those options as well. So you can set up a bit of a hierarchy there to control what is allowed and what isn't allowed. The other thing you'll notice is it automatically calculated out the amount of trim I needed and also the number of shelves I needed as well. So as you're changing this quantity here up at the top, it's automatically adjusting, the sort of the related quantities on those components. So that's really handy. I mean, here in a desk, that's kind of minor, but that does kind of give you a bit of a, parametric design capability where you can say, hey, I'm building something that's, 20 feet long. What's the square footage of the material I need? Or, what's the length of the material I need? Those sorts of things. So you can set up rules like that. So in this one, it's pretty simple, right? It's a 20-foot long desk. It's a pretty good computer desk with a whole bunch of other goodies. And then when I hit OK, of course, it's going to go and generate that and add it to the order. And of course, based on my configuration, it didn't want to add that to the order. So let's just go in there and do it again. So I apologize, I do that sometimes. I'm going to come in here and we'll just do the same thing. We'll do a 20-foot desk and we'll do the wooden doors and we'll do the trim and we'll go bring that in. And there it is. So there's my 20-foot desk and away we go. Now, a couple other things on this. This one, if I come in and enter the quantity here, you'll notice that this is not an assemble to order item. This is actually a manufactured item. So what it's got is it's actually got a BOM and a routing. So we can actually go ahead and look at that item itself. But if I bring it up again in the BOM designer, we've got a few things we can do here. First of all, if I look at this item structure, I'll point out a couple of things. So number one, we've got, the bill of materials and the routing brought in here. And this guy here is somewhat interesting because it added this operation, this drilling operation, because I chose the wooden doors. Had I not chosen the wooden doors, if I chosen the, whatever it was, the glass doors, or I can't remember the other option, or not chosen doors at all, I wouldn't have got this drilling operation. So it's able to add labor conditionally into the configuration as well. Okay, so that's the structure. And if we actually go in and look at this, what it's done is it's created one with, description. You get to define what descriptions you want, all of that kind of stuff, and it's all set up and ready to go. And there, by the way, is doc extender if you want to drag and drop drawings or whatever you like in there. All right, there's a few questions here. So there is a question on how we're actually doing this changing of the quantity here. I'll show you that in a sec. And can the options be bidirectional? Select shelves first. Technically, yes. If I chose shelves here, if I wanted, I could force the length to be a certain quantity, if you prefer, right? A minimum quantity or something like that. So yes, it can work both ways. And if I chose shelves, maybe that prevents me from choosing glass doors or something like that. So you can have a whole hierarchy of rules like that. We'll have a look at that in a sec. Now, this is the basic interface. We've had people extend it to show, pictures of the components that are chosen, all those sorts of things as well, if you like. But this is the sort of the out-of-the-box basic interface. One thing I'll mention down here, this description 2, this does give you the ability to link in a field from the sales line as well. And where we see that, it's usually not description 2, it's usually a custom field like part mark. So if you're building up a configuration off a drawing or something like that, you can put a customer reference in on a per line basis, on a per configuration basis. So that's just a configuration. You tell it which field you also want to be able to edit in here, and it'll allow that to happen. All right, so that's basically it for, I built a desk and a computer here, and then they're thinking, you know what, it's going to be, I'm going to be standing around all day. I need to get some exercise, so I also want to add a bike to this order. So let's just do that. It's not going to be really any different, but I will show you a couple of things on the bike that are interesting. So I'm going to go in, and again, we're going to do the BOM designer, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the mountain bike. And same idea, we've got a couple things that are default. I have to select them, and away we go. And you'll notice actually, before I even selected anything, we had a default price in there. So the bike was $1,200 by default. And then anything I'm doing is adding on to that price because we've got a base bill of materials, right? A bike, you know, has a lot more components than these 5 that I'm choosing here. So you set up a base bill of materials, it's all the shared components, and then I'm just plugging in the additional things that a customer might want to add to that configuration. And here's an interesting one where I can come in and I can say, you know, I want back or front and back. So I'm going to choose front and back for the mud guards. I'm not going to do a light, those sorts of things. I'm going to hit OK. And of course, it's going to create that item for me. It's going to put it on here with a nice description and all the details. This is all configurable as well, by the way, if you want all this extended text coming in on the sales order and all that sort of thing. But just to have a look at this, let's go into that BOM designer again. So there, I just chose these 4 little options here. And if we go in and we look at the structure of that, what we've actually got by choosing those 4 little options, it's built out this whole BOM and routing for us all automatically, right? So it makes it very easy when you have, you know, a standard bill and you've just got a few options to choose. Here's all the details. And you'll notice here, here's the stuff I chose, right? The bell, the standard handlebars, the gel saddle. And over here though, you'll notice we added in a front mudguard and a back mudguard component. So I added in 2 components, even though I only made 1 choice, right? The choice was either a back mudguard or front and back. When I chose front and back, it automatically added in 2 components. So I'll show you how that looks. Now there's another question on non-stock items. That's actually not a bad one. No, we don't have non-stock item support. I'll show you what we do have. Though you could potentially extend it to allow non-stock items by default. And I'm assuming by non-stock items, you mean what they now call in Business Central, the catalog items, versus just the setting on the item card that indicates whether it's not stocked or not. If it's just a standard item card, yes. If it's those catalog items, then no, we don't support that. And then there's another question, if we export the CAD DWG file. No, we don't have any integration with that. But again, the nice thing about this is what we're doing is we're just generating a standard nav or Business Central bill of materials and routing. So if you have CAD integration or you go to a third party for CAD integration, any of those additional things just work out of the box, right? So what we've done here is I've come into a sales quote and I've built these configurations and I don't have to do anything else. The rest of Nav and Business Central works exactly the way it would normally work. MRP works the same. If you have CAD integration, it works the same. You know, any assemble to order or assemble to stock stuff, it all works exactly the same, right? There's no custom configurator things in the planning stuff or anything like that. You don't need it, right? I come in here, I build this, and whatever additional processes, add-ons, anything else you have will just work. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so there's another question on how it creates that. I'll show you that in a sec. All right, so that's the basics, right? I come in here and I can build up my configurations on the quote, turn the quote into an order, do my order planning, run MRP, whatever I need to do at this point. The last thing I'll show you real quick is just that bulk configuration thing. So let's say somebody is coming in, they want a whole bunch of desks, or in this case, they want to buy a whole bunch of bikes all at one time. If I go into the bulk editor, what it does is it gives me a more of a spreadsheet type view to actually build up my configurations. So I can come in here and I can say they want, you know, 2 of those bikes with the standard handlebars. They want, you know, basically all these different configurations. I'll just leave it at that. And they want 4 bikes with standard handlebars and, you know, mud guards, back mud guards only. You know, bikes maybe isn't the best example, but if you're building up a bunch of PCs or a bunch of desks or whatever, that might be a better example. But this allows me again to come in Oh, and I got to choose a type of saddle. So it yells at me that I didn't choose a seat for the guys to sit on. And when I do that, it goes in there. And again, it just dumps those in and away we go. So here's all the 3 bikes that I just finished configuring. Okay, with the pricing and costs and everything associated with it. All right, so that's the basics of it. That's how it works. Now let's actually have a little bit of a look at the configuration, how we actually set these guys up. So what we've got here are the configurator item categories. And again, this is where we come in and we decide, okay, what are your product lines? If I've got 10 different product lines for, office PCs, I might have 10 of these different things. Now I'll go through some of these options here. This is almost like the training you need to deploy this thing, but you'll get a general idea of it. So the first thing is this data template. That's a standard data template from Business Central. So if you go into an item and you say, save this item as a template, that's what it's creating. It's creating one of these data templates, but you can create them on the fly on your own if you like. And they just define what the defaults are for the item you're creating. And that's where we get to that last question. What it's doing today is for every configuration you create, it's either going to find an existing item with that same configuration, or it's going to create a new item with that configuration. Okay, so for each configuration, you get an item. And a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm going to have millions of items. Well, probably not millions, but yes, you may end up with a lot of items, but it doesn't really matter because you're not dealing at the item master level anymore. What you're dealing with is the configuration. When I'm looking for an Office PC, I'm not necessarily going into the item master to search 500 items for the right PC. I'm going to go in there, set my options, and it's going to find the option for or the configuration for me or create a new one for me. Okay, and again, that allows us to do everything I mentioned before. Everything in Standard Nav or Business Central works the way it always works. All we're doing is we're creating that item that you can now plan, execute, do whatever you need to from there. We do actually have something in our roadmap to allow you to build up BOMs and routings, assembly BOMs and production BOMs and routings without having an item, but that requires more changes in Standard Nav and Business Central. But for now, it's actually going to create an item and it's going to use that data template and this number series to create those items for you. Okay. And then you can decide whether you want that to be an assembly BOM or a production BOM. If you choose a production BOM like that mountain bike, you can have a base routing and you can have something called choices, which allows you to add in labor as required, right? So same thing up here with the desk. I cheated and used the same routing, but with the desk, I added in that drilling operation. And I was able to do that because I can select alternate operations or change the quantities, like the run times of existing operations. And then over here, we've got, how we set up the description. So you can have, rules for descriptions and everything else. And there's that linked field name where you can tie it to a field on the sales order. So that's it. This is how we set up the product line. You come in here, you set this up, and you know what? I'm going to do the mountain bike. And then you come in here, and then the next step is the options. So here, again, I've just come in, you saw on the screen, I had handlebars, saddle, bell light. These are my options that I can choose. Up here is the base bill of materials. So this is everything that every bike needs other than the options that I'm going to allow the user to select. And you didn't see that because we hid that. The user isn't able to select that or do anything with it, right? So what we can do when we set these options, like this is pretty basic. Handlebars, I've got 2 items I can choose from. Saddle, I've got 2 items. Bell, so on and so forth. All of these things. And down here, I've got, some fanciness. Now, within each of these choices that we have for each option, you can come in and you can set that as an item, a production BOM. So if you want multiple items to be chosen, resource, operation. So resources for assembly if you need to add labor. Operation, again, you can add additional operations into the configuration based on what you've chosen. We've got text, so for instructional information, that sort of thing. And that'll tie, an assembly BOM that just goes into the BOM. But on a production BOM, that'll go into the routing comments or the operation comments. If you're using a routing link code, you can specify that as well. Or it can go onto the BOM if there's no routing. And then we can select a routing and a sub configuration. So I didn't talk about sub configurations much, but you can have hierarchical configurations where, let's say I'm building that desk and there's a bunch of options like for different, you know, feet, rubber feet or plastic and all sorts of things, right? So I could have a separate configuration that builds up an assembly or another production BOM, or builds up a, you know, a phantom BOM on my main production BOM with all of those options. So you can have multiple things. Like one example, you know, you're building a truck and that truck has an engine. Well, the engine is also configurable. So the truck is configurable, and within that you have another configurable item, which is the engine. So it allows you to have multiple levels of configurations. Okay, so these are all the things that you can specify here. And I'll just talk about this mudguards one here for a sec. And this one's a little bit interesting because what the user sees is they see these two options, back only or front and back. And what I've done is I've said, you know what, if they choose back only, so if they've got this code here called back, you'll notice up here, if this parent code is back, it's going to include this component, and that's it. Up above, we can see if they choose front and back, we're going to include these two components. So you have that ability to bring in child components based on a selection you make. So what I'm presenting to the user is just some text options here. They can choose this, and based on those, we're pulling in additional components. Okay, and I'm going to back out of this mountain bike for a second and just do the same thing with the desk, because that one has, when I choose the doors, it has a similar concept, right? If I choose a wooden door here, the 7010, up here, it forces in this drilling operation. And in addition, it sets the runtime on that drilling operation to this formula. Okay, so that formula can use any of the variables that are defined. So each of these options is actually a variable that we can use. It's like a cell in an Excel spreadsheet. So this is a weird formula for runtime, but I can say, yeah, the length divided by 2 plus 1 times 2. There's a bunch of options in there for rounding, or functions for rounding, and various mathematical things that you can use as well, but that's how you define your formula, right? Now, in addition to that, let's look at these choice combinations. So if I go in there, this is where we can set some of those rules that I talked about. So if you need really advanced rules, like if there's 5 different decisions you need to make to decide if you include an option or disallow an option and those sorts of things, you're going to write a little bit of AL code to do that. And it is actually very simple. Like I said, there's a framework in there that you can say, hey, you're not dealing at the table level or any of that kind of stuff. You don't need to, you just say, hey, what's the value for my length option, and what's the value for this, and okay, set the choice for this option to this value. It's very easy to do, but through just configuration, you can actually do quite a bit. So in this case, we've got a few different things here. The first one here is I say, hey, if I change the length, right? If I change that length option, I want to automatically change the quantity of the trim to this formula. So the trim is length times 2 plus 5, right? So whatever formula you want to throw in there. And then I also say, you know what, if I change the length and it's 10 or greater, I want to force the inclusion of these shells with this specific quantity. So in here, we can include, exclude, or change quantity based on various things. So I can say, hey, if my length is less than 10, I want to exclude shells, and if it's greater than 10, I want to force including them, or whatever you want to do. So there's lots of those different options that you can use within the system. Okay. So that's the basic calculation capabilities inside there. We can do it at the child here, and we can do it up here when we decide what choices are allowed based on other choices that have been made. Okay, so few questions. So it says, can I have 100 possible configurations for one item BOM? Yes, I'm not sure if I understand the question, but yes, you can create, once I've created this configuration, this might result in, 1,000 different configurations for that specific settings, right? Okay, hopefully that I understood the question, okay. Is there a configuration package available? Yeah, I mean, I can, if you're interested and you want to play with it, I can always export all the data I have here. Like I said, this is all basically Cronus data, so you could just import this and play with it if you like. And same question the second time. So cool, yes. Yeah, I can, if you're interested, just fire us off an email. I can get you the, the configuration package that you can load up to play with. But really, setting this up is actually very easy. I actually set up this Office PC thing here because I had all the items in the item master ready. That took me literally about 5 minutes, maybe 6. So I might lie a little. Took me maybe 5 or 6 minutes to come in here and set this up. It was very easy. I just said, okay, these are the different things I want on my computer, and then for each one, I just set up those different options. Now, this one doesn't have any rules or any of those sorts of things, but it wouldn't be hard to set it up, right? All right. Oh, and by the way, over here is where you can come in and decide if you want it showing up in that sort of spreadsheet view on the sales quote or sales order. If I want to just show the choice of processor, if I want them to be able to choose all of these different types of things to enter when they're in that spreadsheet view. Okay. It does have support for variants and all that kind of stuff as well. While I'm in here, let's actually have a look at one of these options, all the different settings that you can have on it. So all the basic stuff. That you can set this item description text. You can use that when you're building up the description of the configuration. So if I didn't want this full text from the item on there, I could just say, 866 megahertz or something like that, and use that in the description instead if I prefer. And a bunch of stuff here, for how you build up the BOM and the routing, all sorts of good stuff. That you can set. Down here, the pricing is often a question that we get. So there's 2 ways you can handle pricing within the system. One is you can manage it within the configurator itself. So I can come in here and I can specify every time I add this particular component into the configuration, I'm going to add $48 to the cost. But I can also say when used, and what that will do is anytime I use this, it's going to go out and look up that price on the fly and bring in the latest price for this particular item. Now that price comes off the item master. If you want to make that customer specific pricing and things like that, you'd have to use the framework that we have to set the pricing based on whatever rules you want to use. Okay. All right. We have some customers that have all sorts of things, like they have markups, right? They want to go in there after the fact, after they've done the quote, and change the pricing just by applying a markup to specific material and things like that. You can do all of that with extensions. It's a very flexible solution that way. Okay, but that's the basics. That's, if I threw this at you now with the configuration package, you could probably figure out how to use this thing on your own and get it working. So when we do the training for new implementations, that's usually what we do. We go through this for a couple of hours, build up the sample configuration, and then you go off and you do the rest of them yourselves with some questions back to us as required. All right, let's see if there's any additional questions on this thing while we're here. No, none yet, but that's okay because that allows me to show you one last thing, because I didn't talk too much about that sub-configuration stuff. So let me just show you that real quick. So I'll go in here, and the idea behind this is a house, right? So I'm configuring a house, bathroom specifically for a house. So each house can have up to 5 bathrooms, and each bathroom can be one of 3 different types of bathroom. It can be a full, half, or 3/4 bath, and each one of those can be configured differently, right? So here you think I'm a contractor and I'm building a house and I want to spec out all the stuff I need to create 3 bathrooms, and they're all going to be different, and they might have all different components. So let's see what that looks like. If I just hit test configuration here, it just lets me test from here without having to go into a sales quote or sales order. So I come in and it says, okay, well, for bathroom 1, it's a full bath. So when I choose that, it says, okay, well, choose all your stuff for a full bath. So I'm going to choose all my, full bath components, all that kind of stuff, and it's going to build up my price for that bathroom. So I've got that bathroom set. And then I come in here and the second one's only going to be a half bath. And then it comes in and lets me build up what I need for the half bath, and so on and so forth. And that's basically it. So these are all sub-configurations of the main configuration. So if I come back in here and I want to change this configuration, I can come in and change that sub-configuration. And again, any of these could be another sub-configuration. Maybe the shower has, different options, and I could drill down and build up the shower configuration. So you can have that multi-level configuration. And that multi-level configuration can all roll up into a single BOM, or you can have that multi-level BOM as well if you prefer, right? So it's up to you how you want that to work. It's just a setting on the options. All right, so that's basically it. That's how we build up, these configurations. That's how we use them within the system, and that's really all there is to it. So nice, quick and easy, simple to set up, simple to use, reasonably low cost. You can grab it off AppSource if you're on Business Central Cloud, quick install, and you're up and running in almost no time at all. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of the week, and hopefully we will be talking again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content.